With the exception of the northern palace, all of Masada is enclosed with a casemate wall. I remember you told me that one. It is a double wall with space in between divided into chambers. The chambers were used for storage or for the living quarters for the troops. It is 1,400 yards in length and made out of dolomite stone, which was quarried at the site. There are about 110 rooms inside of the wall, ranging from 6 to 38 yards. These are some of the examples of things found within the casemate wall. These are oil lamps, pottery, shelves, and I believe this is makeup. It was a makeup holder. These are more examples. Rings, jewelry, and this is pieces of cloth. The storehouses are in the northeastern section of Masada, and they have a typical storehouse construction. They were almost completely destroyed when excavation began, and they were pretty much just stumps of walls. And this was most likely caused by a series of earthquakes in the site. They actually restored the storehouses first, then excavated them, and they were each made of slabs of dolomite stone, also quarried at the site, and each slab weighed about 400 to 500 pounds. So it took them a little time. This is a picture of the storerooms before excavation began. As you can see, they're pretty much destroyed. So it's very hard to actually excavate them at this point. The synagogue is situated facing Jerusalem, and there are benches around the wall with columns in the middle. There's many scrolls and inscriptions also found in the synagogue. This is believed to be the oldest synagogue in Israel, actually. The scrolls that were found in the synagogue contained the book of Ezekiel and the book of Deuteronomy, which is in the Old Testament. There was 14 scrolls found in total. There were also inscribed pottery found here with about 700 pieces. They recorded the name of the presumed owner and sometimes even the date. The date of things were dated in the Roman system of recording dates, which bore the name of the Roman consul at that time and the particular year in that particular year. In this case, it was C. Sentus Centurius. This is an aerial view of the synagogue. As you can see, it is the columns and then seating around the outside. The Byzantine Church, as I said earlier, this was inhabited by Byzantine monks in the 5th and 6th CE. It is located in the south of the residential building and includes a long hall with an apse. The walls are covered with plaster and decorated with pottery shards and small stones, and has mosaic flooring. This has an obvious Byzantine design. This is a picture of the flooring. As you can see, it is very obviously Byzantine art because of the mosaics. Now I'll be talking about the second period of occupation. Originally, that's out of order. In the 1st century CE, Palestine was under the occupation of the Romans, who had overthrown the Jewish Maccabean kingdoms in the previous century, like I said earlier. In 66 AD, a full-scale revolt was given by the Jews. In 70 AD, the Roman general Titus conquered Jerusalem and expelled the Jews. In 66 AD, Jewish rebels took back Masada from the Romans. The rebels held Masada for 2 years. The 10th Legion was sent by the Roman consul to take back the fortress and establish a base at Masada. They actually built a ramp of stone and dirt to reach the summit because, as I showed earlier, the snake path is very hard to bring a Roman legion up. Seeing the advance of the Roman troops and not having the manpower or the resources to fight back, the Jewish rebels chose death over slavery to the Romans, and allegedly 960 committed mass suicide and burned the buildings of Masada, allegedly. The only account we have of what happened at Masada was from Josephus Flavius. He was originally a Jewish military leader, then after the Roman takeover became part of the Roman army. He was a 1st century historian, and he is the only record of what actually happened there. It was told to him by 2 women that allegedly escaped the mass suicide. The reliability of Josephus is often questioned because of his Roman patronage. This is a picture of the actual ramp that still stands today. As you can see, they actually had to build this entire ramp in order to get to the top. This shows the actual steepness of this ramp. This is looking down from the site, and you used to be able to walk up it, but since it's extremely old, you probably don't want to anymore. There's many coins that were found at the site, and this helps with actual dating of the site. You can actually buy these coins on eBay if you feel the need to, which I found extremely funny. It's actually where these pictures are from. There were also many renovations made to the actual buildings. Much of the original structures were repurposed by the Jewish rebels during their occupation. The living quarters of the northern palace were partitioned into smaller living areas for families, and the Cassamite wall was further split into rooms for the rebels. There were cupboards built into the walls as well as hearths, and this is the picture of one of the hearths in the Cassamite wall. They found the remains of the structure of actual mud houses for people to live in, but since they were made out of mud, they are no longer there. Many of the public buildings were used for administration or military needs. There was a large example of sandals and clothing and other bits of cloth found at the site. Because of the arid environment, these artifacts were in excellent shape, and these sandals are actually very modern. In fact, I have a pair of these in my closet. As Dr. Ramsey would say, nothing's new. According to Josephus' account, in the last moments of the Jewish occupation, they set fire to the public areas. There is excellent evidence of this around the excavation site. Public areas were covered in a thick layer of ash, and burned timbers had scorch marks. This actually helped preserve many of the paintings by shielding them from nature. This is a picture of some of the burned timbers in the storerooms, actually. The large amounts of seeds and plants found at the site obviously need to eat. For botanical remains, research was done to identify the plant species. Over 1,200 samples were taken for identification. Identification is based on morphological microscopic characteristics and anatomical microscopic examination. There were 25 plant species that were identified, including date, palm, reed, cedar, cypress, juniper, acacia, almond, sycamore, oleander, and Mount Tabor oak. This is some of the pictures of the seeds found at the site. And my favorite part, human remains. When I first chose this site, I mainly chose it because I thought there was going to be 960 bodies at the site. Much to my surprise, there was not. Little disappointing, I must add. The remains of approximately 28 people found at Masada, 15 males, 7 females, 5 children, and 1 embryo. They were found in a cave on the side of the Masadan Plateau. This is far less, obviously, than the 960 described by Josephus. But again, Masada was occupied for 40 years after by the Romans, and you're not going to have 960 bodies laying around. So they might have cremated the remains, and we don't actually have evidence of that today. It's debatable whether the remains are actually from the Jewish revolt, although dating puts them at the time of the revolt. They were also found with pig bones, which, as any good Jew would know, you do not bury yourself with pig bones, which is an unclean animal in the Jewish faith. This is a scan of the bones in situ. As you can see, they're actually very haphazardly thrown in. They're not given a lot of time for burial. Masada is actually very important significance in Israel today. The Chief of Staff of the Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, used to initiate the swearing-in ceremony of soldiers who had completed their basic training on top of Masada. This is actually a picture of it right up here. The ceremony ends with the declaration that Masada shall not fall again. The soldiers then climb the snake path at night and are sworn in with torches lighting the background, which must be pretty. It became a tourist site with a cable car, as you can see, because no one wants to climb up that snake path at 100-degree weather, unless you're Dr. Ramsey, who actually did that. It became a World UNESCO Heritage Site in 2001. In 2007, a new museum was opened at the site in which many of the archaeological findings were displayed. A 2,000-year-old seed was discovered during the archaeological excavations in the early 1960s, and has actually been successfully germinated to become a date plant. Yes. It is the oldest known such germination. Radiocarbon dating puts the seed anywhere from 206 BC to 2480. So they were able to germinate a over 2,000-year-old seed. There was a lot of controversy with this site, as with any religious site. Josephus' account of Masada is very similar to his experience in the fall of the fortress of Yodfat, where he was one of the last few survivors of the battle, and they hid him and his companions hid in a cave and chose to die rather than give up to Roman forces. Sound familiar? And Josephus survived by basically copping out. There's also a book by Ben Yehuda Nachman, which I actually read, which is a very good book if anyone is ever interested in controversial biblical archaeology sites. I'm sorry, I moved away from this. And Yigal Yildin is actually quoted as saying that Masada is the most glorious of chapters in Jewish history and the history that was uncovered there. If you read Yigal Yildin's actual excavation report from the site, you can clearly see that he was very biased in his excavation. I know Dr. Ramsey always says biblical archaeologists dig with a tool in one hand and a Bible in the other, and it's very clear that he did that. I've never read any kind of excavation report that is that detailed. I did not know they were that creative. This points out that Hayden's interest in Masada comes from nationalistic and religious reasons, which obviously not great when you're actually excavating a site. Because, as the great Indiana Jones said, archaeology is about uncovering facts and not the truth. Any questions?